This is CRE, The Unspoken Truth. Today, our episode is handling the emotional highs and lows of commission-based work. And I'm Charlie Capola, joined with my father, Craig. And so I want to start out early on in your career. How did you handle months where you had no income, no money coming in?
Well, I had no money early on, and so I didn't have very many months where I didn't have any money, but I had a lot of months where I didn't make any money. So, um, I mean, very much money. So I tell you, the first thing that we teach our young people when they train with us is you have to keep your expenses super low.
Yeah.
And so you can survive on doing a deal and a deal, back in the day, I could live on $1,100 a month.
Mm.
So what's that, $12,000 a year? So in my first couple months in the business, I was a runner making nothing, and then um, I was living on whatever I was. So I was living on $1,000 a month. And
Yeah.
so when I did my first deal, which was a 1,200-foot transaction, I think I made 1,000 or $2,000. So that covered me for the month. And then I closed a $2,000 or $3,000 deal. And fairly, pretty quickly, I was able to have enough for the year in there.
Mm.
But you really got to keep your expenses low
Yeah.
initially. And so we teach our runners, I mean, that we don't pay them very much. We pay them 25,000 bucks and they work for us for 3 years. So they are learning how to live without very much money.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would imagine you probably keep expenses low for at least a year or two. Like it's longer than you want it to be, maybe longer.
I, I kept it, well, I kept my expenses super low until I got married to your mom.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then two can't live as cheaply as one. And during that time, I ended up buying a house and renting out uh, one of the rooms in it. So I had a roommate, and so my expenses were low even after I owned a house. But you're we say this to you all the time and our kids is live as cheap as you can, as long as you can. And the reason for that is there's two ways to be financially independent. I've said this a lot. Robert and Kim Kiyosaki, who are longtime dear friends, uh, they had their book, but they had really low lifestyle and they had a little bit of income coming in and they were financially independent. So you can make a lot of money and blow it, or you can make very little money and just have a low lifestyle and still be financially independent. And they were, and in brokerage, if you want to really weather the highs and lows, one of the ways, the key way to do it is just to not have a very big expense account. It's easy.
Yeah, yeah. So when things are not going your way, do you have a mantra or something to just like stick with it and keep going? Um, and
Well,
not let the lows bring you down emotionally?
yeah, I think we said this before on lots of podcasts. I mean, the number one thing is pipeline.
Yeah.
If you lose two or three deals, but you have 30 deals in your pipeline, you've got some income coming in. So very quickly, I think that the idea is I want to keep my expenses so low that I don't have to worry about it. And then number two, I want to build my pipeline up so that I can start saving money. And I remember, I think I've told this maybe not here on this podcast, but the first year, that maybe the second or third year in the business, I made six figures. That year I took in 1987, so it would have been the third year in the business. I took over 50% of my earnings, which would have been 60% or so of my post-tax earnings, and spent it all getting my CCIM because I was reinvesting in myself. So a lot of folks go out and they'll then go buy a car, or do some crazy trip. And that's one of the challenges we see now is everybody wants everything right away. Back in those days, we were okay delaying gratification. And so taking advantage of delayed gratification is something that's super powerful when you're on a commission-based
Yeah.
job.
You need to. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've said on other podcasts, pipeline equals heartbeat. And then another one of your quotes from another podcast, it's nothing solves self-doubt like pipeline.
Pipeline.
And so it's good.
Yeah, and I think pipeline is we just we want to know. I wanted to know. I had this. We have the sheet TIP suite sheet, and I would just write it in there, and I just like when are these deals going to close, and how much am I going to make? And I just write a very conservative number on it, and I start going, okay, if I can close 70% of these, or 60% or 50%, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And then once you become fine, then it's like, okay, now we're just talking about what are we going to spend our additional money on? And there's lots of places you could spend money on. Certainly a car, because you're a broker and you're touring. You could buy a fancy car. I never bought new cars for a long period of time. I actually, and so I've only owned 4 cars in 35 years. So I just buy cars and I drive them for a long period of time, and I like them, and that's it. We were talking to Tom Boyle, who's been my a partner at Lean Associates. He's had 22 cars in the same time that I've had 4. And
Yeah.
so he likes cars. So that wasn't my thing. I'd rather spend it on other things. And so it's crazy.
I was gonna, so we've talked a little bit about the lows of the, commission-based work. I want to talk a little bit about the highs. One of the questions I wrote down is like, I'm not sure you're gonna have the best answer. How do you celebrate a big deal or a milestone? And I think if I were to answer for you, it would be like investing or saving. Um, so maybe I'll ask it this way. Is there any, and you can answer that for yourself, but is there any broker in your office or anyone in your market, anyone that you're like, hey, they do this when they close a big deal and they celebrate? It's a cool way to celebrate.
Sure. So I will tell you that today it's investing, but early on it was to the same conversation we had early on was, how do I pay off my house?
Mhm.
And so I got a real joy once I had enough cash to know that I could survive the year to start chunking down my house. And so when we sold that house that we're before that we live in now, I owned it free and clear. And so that was so I bought that house, and we were maybe in it 8 or 9 years, and I paid it off. And so that was real joy in paying off that house. And then when we paid this house off the first time, I paid this house, I say this all the time, I've paid this house off 5 times because I'll reinvest. But when I paid it off the first time, there's some real joy in that. So that's one way that I do it. I know some guys that there was one fellow that was a land broker. Every time he closed a big deal, he bought a new watch. So he was buying really fancy watches, and as the deal got bigger, he'd buy fancier watches. I know another person that was buying pins like Mont Blanc and other pins. So there are ways of making that. Mine were more financial to start chunking away some of the things that we had to pay for, 529 plans, colleges,
Yeah.
those kind of thing. And I felt a lot of joy in that, starting to chunk and get ahead of those games.
Yeah. Do you remember your first big and, your first big check, first big deal?
I do.
Yeah.
I remember my first deal. I remember my second deal because it turned out to be a crazy deal, a small world. My second deal was with this nonprofit organization. My first deal was with 2 psychologists. My second deal was with this nonprofit organization that funded things in third world countries. And I did the deal, and a month later, I wake up in the morning and there's a whole bunch of people protesting out front of their building. Turns out that nonprofit was the arm for Ollie North to fund the Contra. You might not know this, but Ollie North was funding during the Ronald Reagan's, the Iran Contra affair was going through this guy Ollie North, and he was using this nonprofit to fund the money to buy arms in South America. And so I did the deal. They had no
Oh
idea.
my
So it
gosh.
was like, this is like the second deal I did. I was like, wow, they obviously bankrupt them the next week.
Dang.
That was
That's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
small world. I never met Ollie North.
Protesters.
I never knew it, but they were burning crosses on the lawn. It was
Dang.
funny. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's crazy. So we talked some on the lows and the highs, but I'm curious on the kind of mental side of it, the emotional stability side of it. Have you found yourself overconfident or complacent after a big year? Or, I know
No,
complacent's not really a word in your vocabulary, but
never, never.
yeah.
In fact, it's just the opposite. Depression. I'd go, as you know, I've been number one in Phoenix office for a long time and was for many, many years. 25 of the first 33 years, I was number one. And I think the first thing is every year I race to be number one, and then I'd be number one, and then January 5th I'd be starting at zero again with everybody else. And it's just a big letdown. Huge, super high highs and super low lows. And even after I, had made a bunch of money, it was still the same thing because, we that's how we keep score. Brokers keep score with how much money did you make and where did you rank in the office. Those are really the scorecards.
Yeah.
I wish I could have done a better job of that. But I kept winning and I'm like, it's been 10 years in a row or 11 years in a row. How do I do this again? And I always use this quote, the Ronda Rousey quote. So on my worst year, I needed to be better than some number two guy on their best year to be number one. And
Yeah.
for a lot of years I was. And so I kind of had to offset that with different things. And so I wrote down a couple of things that I did that with. And the first one was, and that's where the idea of this fantastic life came up in my book, The Fantastic Life, is I didn't want to be a one horse broker where that was all that was my life. So while I wanted to be number one at Lean Associates, I also wanted to run, and you see my kind of my wall behind me. I also wanted to run marathons. I also wanted to be the world champion taekwondo. I also wanted to, coach you and coach your sisters. And so I had a whole bunch of outside activities. And so that the fantastic life theory became when in one area like business wasn't doing particularly well, other areas were doing good. Me as a father, me as a husband, me as an athlete. And so that's what, to me, it was like I always rank myself in my resumes as what was I building that year. And so I might have an off year in business, but I didn't have an off year as a dad, or I didn't have an off year as an athlete.
It's one of my last questions I had here. I wrote down is how do you not put all your eggs in one basket? For a broker, it's one number. It's how much, did you earn? How many deals do you close? That's it. And I think you talked about some of the support systems you use, which is having other things going on in your life. We see that at one source too, is we have one or two key numbers, but we have a bunch of other ones. And so, that's one way we don't put all our eggs in one basket. But what else would you do on the business side to
Yeah, I think, we have to say trust the process. And for brokers, the process is, did I make my calls? And so I'm always, I just made my calls for the month, and now it's the 7th of the month, and I'm done with this month. I'm going to start now on next month. I was ahead 3 or 4 months before I started traveling, and so I started saying, hey, did I make my calls? Did I do all the meetings I should have? Is my pipeline growing? And just diversifying. At the end of the day, it's all about how much did we make, but how much I made was directly dependent on how many calls I made, how many people I was talking to, how many boards was I on, how many transactions were in my pipeline. So I diversified that down to what's the core principle, first principles of, hey, if you're trusting the process, you're going to get there. If we have 160 deals in our pipeline at any time, then we're going to close 130 transactions this year. So that's what we want to do. And so one of the challenges now that I'm not doing all the deals is I knew I could close deals. And so some of our runners aren't closing as many deals. Their close ratio is not mine. So we've had to kind of adjust that. But
Yeah.
yes, you're looking at lots of things.
I wrote this. We used to talk about it in baseball all the time when you coached us, focus on the process, not the
Right.
result, right? And
Right.
it's if you're doing your calls, if you're showing up every day consistently, like the results will take care of themselves, right?
I probably send out, I'm a big quote guy. And if you were to break down my quotes, 70% of them have to do with consistency, process, showing up.
Right.
And part of it is because I'm still telling myself, look, it's about showing up. It's about doing what you need to do. It's about getting those things done. And so, my roles have changed, but the same things happen. I still have the process I have to do.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to the one point I did want to make. The number one thing I think I did better than anything else over any other thing was from the very first day, I took a long-term perspective. From the very first phone call to the phone call today that I'm making 40 plus years later, I'm looking at the long-term perspective. I'm not losing relationships. I'm not pushing them. If there's a time to close a deal, I'll do it. If there's time not, I don't push it. And so I think that having that perspective, especially now that I have a legacy team that's going to last long beyond my career, that I still have that perspective. And
Yeah.
it's really hard for brokers to do that, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good. It's the Warren Buffett, right? I mean, he's the best at it too, is he's 90 plus and he's still investing for the long term.
He's, yeah, he's giving it away.
Yeah.
His kids are giving away, you know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And so I think if we just saw pipeline, long-term perspective, balanced outside activities doesn't mean your day's balanced. That's the misnomer. I had a balanced activities, but it was because I worked first and then I did all these other things and I got lost sleep. But we have to really understand the process of a broker is not done in 40 hours a week or 50.
Mhm.
And it
Yeah.
could be now at my stage, but certainly when you're young, no.
We've done two other topics on here. One was brokerage and marriage, and the other one was brokerage and parenting, right? So managing a family life outside of brokerage. And kind of the last thing I want to touch on here is obviously, it's an emotional roller coaster as you close deals or you lose deals and you make no money one month and then you have a big month. But I do think it's probably exponential when you bring in a family or a spouse. And so moderating your own emotions is one thing, but then moderating your family's. Any comments on that topic?
Uh, it, it, it's super it's super hard to get out of the office. We live close to the office, drive 5 minutes and go from high octane type A
Competitive,
to
you know,
competitive to being a father and husband.
selfless and yeah,
It's really hard. I'm not sure I did a good job of it. I have a great wife who did a way better job of it, and she was, for the most part, really good and understanding about how much pressure there is, and there is a lot of pressure. Let's just call it what it is. Being a broker and a high producing broker at that, there's a way to be a low producing broker and not make a lot of money, of course, but to be a high producing broker and to have there's just a lot of stuff that's happening all the time that's high risk, and so it's very stressful.
yeah,
And closing deals is very stressful. It's not nearly anymore because I'm financially solid, but if at the for a long time, and we're talking 30 years, it's hard. So I don't know if I have great answers other than, when I tried to leave, and I tried to do activities that would immerse me. Even though I was always on the phone, I was forwarding and talking to emails. I mean, I'd be at baseball practice with you, and I'd taken a phone call, and I'd be hitting fungos with a phone call. Those things happen. But then as soon as that's done, I'm right back into the deal. So I
yeah.
got pretty good, I think, at focusing in the moment and being with it. Uh, it's changed now because we're so connected. It's even harder today because we are connected
Yeah.
7/24.
I'd say one thing you did well, and it was also more of the times too, is like you when you got home, you left your phone,
In the
and it
car.
was easier when you didn't even have a phone, but yeah, you'd leave it in the car. And so, there wasn't that thing pinging in your pocket trying to get your attention when you were at home. And
The,
I
the,
think that is a challenge today. Yeah.
the speed and depth of transactions has really improved.
Yeah.
And so it's good. It's not very good. It's good for us because we were very high octane business and we're on it all the time. I'm working on a sale of a building right now, and literally 50, 70% of all the emails have been after hours or on the weekends. And so that just and it's in my nature to kind of just answer them and do it. I've been training our young runner how fast things work, and he doesn't get it. And so I'm like, he said, send me a text. I'm with my girlfriend. I'll get to it later. I'm like, no, when we're with our girlfriend or our wife or our kids, we stop. We tell them, hey, we got 5 minutes. We got to do this thing. And he didn't understand that. I mean, that this is how it works. Now, not all brokers will agree with this. And I would say that most top brokers would,
It's a difference.
yeah, they're different breed. They just
Yeah.
get on,
Well, it's high school football versus NFL, the speed, or whatever it is, college football, college
yeah,
basketball versus
yeah,
the NBA.
that's true.
The speed and the technicality with speed, all
Well,
It's different.
it's interesting because I just got off the phone with Mike Lipsy, and he's in his 70s and he calls me back within 3 minutes. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter
Yeah.
nights and weekends. So he doesn't need to do that. And that's just this is the nature of top producers
Mhm.
doing it for a long period of time. And I'm like, this is just how I do it.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that there's a lot of people preaching out there that you don't put boundaries and do this other stuff. And I totally get it. But that I just look at that and go, great, you can be number two. You're not going to be number one doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you. This is really good stuff. Handling the highs and lows of the emotional commission based work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.